The interstellar Marshall Academy floated in orbit above the crystal blue planet of Vera. From the outside, it looked like a massive starship made of shining metals, with long, arching towers and glass panels reflecting distant suns. But inside, it was alive with energy, filled with the sounds of clanging metal, humming machinery, and students talking in dozens of languages. Every year, the Academy welcomed the galaxy's best students, creatures of every size, shape, and intelligence, coming together to learn the ancient arts of weapon crafting and combat mastery. Among the countless students was Elias Ward, a human boy barely 17. Compared to most of the other students, Elias looked small and unassuming. His brown hair always fell over his eyes, and his uniform seemed slightly oversized. But his green eyes carried a calm determination that set him apart. Elias had come to the Academy not because he wanted fame or glory, but because humans, though young in the galaxy, had a quiet way of turning weakness into strength, and he wanted to prove that. The Academy's main hall was vast. Weapons of all kinds hung from walls or floated in transparent cases: glowing swords, levitating hammers, spinning energy discs, and bows that fired lasers. Students worked tirelessly at their forges, shaping steel, crystal, and exotic alloys into deadly masterpieces. The instructors, a mix of elder humans and alien veterans, moved silently among them, observing and grading. Elias, however, did not touch the glowing metals or advanced tools. Instead, he carried a small, polished piece of bone with him everywhere he went. It was white, smooth, and slightly curved, and he had spent hours cleaning and shaping it. No one knew where it had come from. Some guessed it was a rare fossil from Earth's long-lost wildlife. Elias had chosen it carefully. He believed that with patience and understanding, even this simple material could become something extraordinary. When his classmates first saw him working with bone, many laughed. "Why would anyone waste time on that?" whispered a tall, blue-skinned student named Rithar. His eyes glowed faintly as he bent steel into a blade wider than a human could even lift. "Steel and energy blades are the only real weapons here. That bone won't even survive the first trial." Others were curious. A few students came closer to peek, asking, "Where did you even get that?" Elias smiled quietly. "From my home planet. It has history and strength. You just have to know how to see it." The instructors, noticing the commotion, decided to observe him more closely. Most expected him to fail. After all, the Academy had never accepted a student who ignored the rules so completely. Every year, students were judged by the complexity of their materials, the energy sources they could incorporate, and the sophistication of their designs. A human alone with nothing but bone seemed like a joke waiting to happen, but Elias did not mind. He worked patiently, filing and polishing the bone, shaping it slowly with simple tools. His hands moved with precision, learning every curve and line. Hours passed, and while others bragged about glowing blades or levitating swords, Elias whispered to himself, "Strength is not in the material, but in how you understand it." The first week at the Academy was filled with tests. Students had to demonstrate basic control, shaping metals with heat and pressure, then test their weapons against defensive drones. One by one, the drones were sliced, pierced, or burned, as students showed their skill. When Elias' turn came, he stepped forward with his simple bone blade. The instructors raised their eyebrows. The other students snickered quietly. The drone hummed to life, its metallic limbs moving with precision. Elias held his blade tightly, but he did not strike immediately. Instead, he watched the drone, noticing every movement. His small hands moved with speed and care, tapping the drone lightly at the joints. To everyone's surprise, the drone faltered. It twisted, spun, and then came to a complete stop. Elias' blade had not broken it apart, yet it had stopped the machine completely. A murmur went through the hall. The instructors exchanged glances. One of the elders, a tall human named Master Kale, approached Elias quietly. "Explain yourself, boy. How did you do that?" Elias looked up, his face calm. "I didn't fight it, I guided it. I learned its movement and used it against itself." Master Kale frowned but nodded slightly. There was wisdom in the answer, though it was unconventional. The other students stared, their laughter replaced by curiosity. Many had never seen a human student act like this, so quiet, so patient, so strategic. Over the next few days, Elias continued working on his blade. While others raced to finish glowing swords or complex plasma weapons, Elias focused on perfection. He studied the bone, learning how to strengthen it with careful shaping, how to balance it for speed, and how to make it flexible enough to absorb force. Every night he stayed in the workshop long after the others left, whispering encouragement to himself and listening to the quiet hum of the forges. Rithar, the blue-skinned student, watched him closely. At first, he wanted to mock Elias, but slowly he became fascinated. He could not understand how such a simple material could even survive the Academy's tests, yet Elias' calm confidence was undeniable. One evening, a massive storm shook the Academy's orbit. Energy systems flickered, and many forges went offline. Students panicked, trying to save their glowing, delicate weapons from being ruined. But Elias' bone blade remained untouched. It did not require power. It did not falter. In the chaos, he calmly adjusted its shape, using the natural strength of the material. It was a small moment, but it reminded the other students that not everything depended on technology. By the end of the first month, whispers about Elias spread through the academy. Some called him foolish. Others said he was brave. But a few began to watch him closely, curious about what a human could achieve with nothing but patience and understanding. One day, the instructors announced the midterm evaluations. Every student would demonstrate their weapon against automated defense constructs in front of the entire academy. Steel would clash, energy would hum, and sparks would fly. It was the moment that would decide reputations and standing. Elias stood quietly in his corner, polishing his bone blade. He felt no fear, only focus. He whispered, "I don't need steel, I need understanding. I need patience. That is the weapon no one can break." When the trials began, the other students went first. Drones and constructs fell under bright blades, sparks flying, energy beams slicing through metal with deadly precision. The crowd cheered, impressed by the spectacle of power. When it was Elias' turn, silence fell. He stepped forward, his blade gleaming faintly under the academy lights. It was simple, smooth, and white, a stark contrast to the glowing steel around it. Many gasped. Some laughed quietly, thinking this would be the easiest failure of the day. Elias took a deep breath and observed the first drone. Its movements were precise, predictable, and fast. He did not rush. He did not strike with force. Instead, he guided, tapped, and redirected. Slowly, carefully, the drone slowed, twisted, and finally came to a complete stop. Not broken, not destroyed, just halted by skill and understanding. The instructors leaned forward, astonished. The other students whispered. Elias' simple bone blade had done something none of the glowing steel or advanced weapons had achieved. It had controlled without destruction. Master Kale stepped forward and nodded, a small smile forming. Perhaps there is more to humanity than we believed. From that day, Elias was no longer just the quiet human student. He was a symbol of patience, ingenuity, and the power of understanding. And though the Academy still valued steel, energy, and complexity, everyone had begun to notice a small, simple human blade made of bone, and the boy who wielded it with unmatched skill. Little did Elias know, this was only the beginning. The true challenges, where his patience, understanding, and humanity would be tested, were yet to come. And when they did, the galaxy would see that strength does not always come from power, but from intelligence, patience, and the courage to stand out in a world that favors the strongest. After the midterm evaluations, the academy was abuzz with whispers. Everyone wanted to talk about Elias Ward, the quiet human with the bone blade that had stopped the defense constructs without breaking them. Some students called him lucky, others said it was impossible, but no one could deny that he had done something extraordinary. Elias, however, did not pay attention to the gossip. He knew that the midterm was only the beginning. There were greater trials ahead, and he had to be ready. Every day, he practiced tirelessly. The bone blade had survived its first tests, but Elias knew that real mastery came from understanding not only the weapon, but also himself. Each morning, the Academy students began with the simulation exercises, a series of challenges that tested combat reflexes, creativity, and adaptability. Today, Elias faced a room filled with multi-limbed attack drones, each programmed with unpredictable patterns. His classmates drew glowing swords or heavy hammers, attacking with brute force. Sparks flew and energy beams cracked through the air. Many drones were destroyed, but some continued to adapt and resist, forcing the students to restart the simulation. Elias approached calmly. His bone blade rested lightly in his hands. He did not rush. He observed the drones' movements, studying the rhythm of their attacks. Slowly, he tapped the first drone, guiding its limbs into positions where they could not strike. The other drones adjusted their actions to compensate, but Elias was ready. He anticipated their responses, moving with careful precision. Hours passed, and one by one, the drones were immobilized, not destroyed. The other students paused to watch. A few whispered in awe. Even Rithar, the blue-skinned student who had mocked him before, stared silently. "How is he doing this?" he muttered. By the time the simulation exercises ended, Elias had completed the challenge without a single scratch on his blade or himself. The instructors were impressed. Master Kale spoke quietly to the head of the academy. "Humans may be small, but they see patterns others cannot. This boy's strength is not in muscle or materials, but in understanding." But the academy was not done testing him. Next came the trial of elements, where students had to pass through chambers filled with fire, ice, wind, and magnetic storms. The purpose was to see if a weapon and its wielder could adapt under extreme conditions. Elias entered the first chamber, fire. Most students raised energy shields, blasting through flames with glowing swords. Elias moved slowly, guiding his blade to deflect heat and push embers aside. The bone did not melt or crack, it flexed just enough to survive. The ice chamber was next. Sharp shards fell from the ceiling, and the floor was slippery. Students who relied on strength slipped or lost control of their weapons. Elias adjusted his stance, moving lightly and guiding the shards aside. The blade absorbed the shocks, bending slightly but returning to its original shape. Wind and magnetic storms were harder. Metallic weapons were pulled or pushed by the fields, and many students struggled to maintain control. Elias, holding a weapon with no metal, was unaffected. He moved with grace, dodging obstacles, and using the natural balance of the bone to navigate the challenges. By the time he emerged, the instructors had never seen a human move with such calm in extreme conditions. Word of Elias' abilities spread quickly. Other students began to follow him, not to mock, but to learn. They observed how he studied patterns, waited patiently, and used intelligence over force. Some tried to copy him, but they lacked his patience and understanding. Elias' approach was subtle, almost invisible, but extremely effective. One evening, Rithar approached him. His glowing blue eyes were serious, no trace of mockery this time. "I want to understand how you do it," he said. "Your blade, it shouldn't survive, but it does. And you move like you know everything before it happens." Elias smiled quietly. "It's not about knowing everything. It's about watching, listening, and waiting. Strength comes from understanding, not force." Rithar nodded slowly, though he didn't fully understand. Still, the seeds of respect were planted. A few days later, the grand combat trials were announced. This would be the true test of every student. Instead of automated drones or simulations, students had to face one another in controlled duels. Points were given for precision, control, creativity, and strategy. The Academy wanted to see who could survive, adapt, and think on their feet. Elias prepared quietly. Other students sharpened their blades, activated energy cores, or practiced spinning heavy hammers. Elias polished his bone blade, feeling its weight and balance in his hands. To him, it was not a weapon, it was an extension of himself. The duels began. One by one, students clashed, their weapons flashing and sparks flying. Many relied on raw power, some relied on speed. A few relied on clever tactics, but none had Elias calm. When it was his turn, the crowd fell silent. Elias faced a large, armored alien student with a massive steel sword. The alien struck first, swinging with overwhelming force. Elias dodged lightly, letting the sword's momentum carry it past him. With a gentle tap, he redirected the attack into the training mat, unbalancing his opponent. The duel continued. Each time the alien tried to overpower him, Elias used careful movements to counter without fighting directly. He observed the alien's patterns, noticed small weaknesses, and adapted. Slowly, the alien grew tired. His swings became sloppy, his defenses weaker. Finally, Elias guided the sword into a safe disarm, ending the duel without harming his opponent. The crowd erupted. They had never seen a human stand against such a strong opponent and win through skill alone. The instructors were silent, exchanging glances of disbelief and admiration. By the end of the day, Elias had completed all his duels. Not once had he relied on brute force. Not once had he broken his blade. And in every match, he had demonstrated that intelligence, patience, and observation could overcome raw strength and advanced technology. But the Academy was not done. A final challenge awaited, the Chamber of Shadows, a legendary test where students faced unknown obstacles in total darkness. The purpose was to see who could survive without relying on sight, energy, or speed alone. Only strategy, adaptability, and instinct would carry a student through. Elias entered the chamber. The air was cool, the walls smooth, and darkness complete. Other students struggled, bumping into walls, swinging wildly, and calling for guidance. Elias moved carefully, letting his other senses guide him. He listened to the faint echoes, felt vibrations through the floor, and used the bone blade to sense obstacles. Slowly, he navigated the chamber with grace and precision, avoiding traps and finding hidden pathways. Hours later, Elias emerged. He was unscathed, his blade unharmed. The instructors, who had watched the chamber for centuries and never seen a human succeed in this way, were speechless. Master Kale stepped forward, placing a hand on Elias' shoulder. "You have shown what few species in the galaxy understand," he said quietly. "Strength is not only what you hold in your hands, it is what you hold in your mind, your heart, and your patience. You have reminded us all why humans are dangerous, not because of power but because of understanding." Elias bowed quietly, his green eyes calm. He did not feel pride or arrogance. He only felt ready. Ready for the next challenges, ready to prove that humans could survive and thrive, where others relied only on strength or technology. By the time the sun rose over the academy, a new respect had spread among the students. They no longer whispered about the human as a joke. They watched him with curiosity, admiration, and a little fear. For humans were small, unassuming, and underestimated. But as Elias had shown, that made them unpredictable and strong in ways others could not understand. And as the stars stretched across the sky, Elias polished his bone blade one last time for the day. He whispered to himself, "This is only the beginning. The galaxy will see what humans can do when we think, endure, and never give up." The Academy had never seen a year like this. Elias Ward, the human student with his simple bone blade, had completed the midterm evaluations, the simulation exercises, the trial of elements, and the grand combat trials, earning respect from instructors and peers alike. But now the final challenge loomed: the Galactic Assessment, a series of tests designed to determine not only a student's skill, but also their potential impact on the galaxy. Unlike previous trials, the Galactic Assessment was not contained within the Academy. The students would be transported to a remote asteroid field where they would face real-world obstacles, hostile terrain, environmental hazards, and automated defense systems designed to test creativity, intelligence, and teamwork. The challenge was dangerous, but it was also the ultimate opportunity to prove themselves. As the students gathered in the launch hall, nerves buzzed through the crowd. Many of the alien students carried sophisticated weapons that glowed and hummed with power. Energy shields, plasma blades, levitating hammers, and crystal whips gleamed under the hall's lights. Elias, by contrast, carried only his bone blade. It was simple, quiet, and unassuming, yet it felt alive in his hands. Master Kale approached him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Elias, the galaxy will see you today," he said quietly. "Remember, it is not the blade alone that makes you strong, but your mind and heart." Elias nodded. He had trained for this moment, not relying on luck or raw strength, but on careful observation, patience, and adaptability. He did not feel fear, only focus. The students were launched into the asteroid field in small pods. The landscape was chaotic. Jagged rocks floated in zero gravity, magnetic storms twisted through the void, and automated defense drones patrolled every corner. The first task was to reach the central control station, which held a holographic interface that each student needed to access to complete the test. Many students immediately charged forward. Their weapons hummed with power, and they struck drones with overwhelming force. Sparks and explosions lit up the darkness, but the field was treacherous. Some students slipped through gaps in the rocks, others were caught by magnetic anomalies, and a few had their weapons malfunction under extreme conditions. Elias moved carefully. He studied the patterns of the drones, noting the gaps between their patrols. He used his bone blade to gently deflect incoming attacks, redirecting drones into harmless positions without destroying them. He moved slowly and deliberately, letting the obstacles guide his path rather than forcing his way through. Hours passed, and Elias found himself approaching the central station. On the way, he encountered a group of younger students who had become trapped in a magnetic field. Their energy weapons were useless against the anomaly. Many had begun to panic, calling for help. Without hesitation, Elias approached. He placed his blade carefully against the field, feeling the vibrations through the bone. He tapped and guided, slowly creating a path where the students could move safely. One by one, they followed him, amazed that a simple human with a simple weapon could solve a problem they could not overcome with advanced technology. Word of his actions spread even through the asteroid field. Other students paused to watch, realizing that brute strength was not enough. Intelligence, calmness, and careful observation could achieve what force alone could not. When Elias reached the central station, he faced the final obstacle: a massive defense drone, larger and more complex than any he had encountered before. Its hull was reinforced with rare metals, and its movement was unpredictable. Most students would have relied on powerful weapons or advanced energy sources to attack it, but Elias did not. He observed the drone quietly. Its movements followed subtle patterns, slight ticks in its rotation, pauses that most could not notice. Elias adjusted his stance and moved in rhythm with the machine. With careful taps and guided strikes, he redirected its energy, using momentum to disable its systems one by one. Sparks flew, but the blade did not break. Finally, with a small, precise strike, the drone powered down completely. The other students watched in disbelief. Elias had defeated the drone without breaking it, without harming it unnecessarily, and without relying on any advanced technology. His method had been subtle, intelligent, and perfect. Master Kale's voice echoed over the comms. "This is what I have always said. Humans are dangerous not because of raw power, but because of understanding, patience, and strategy. Elias, you have shown the galaxy what we are capable of." The assessment was not yet over. A final test remained: cooperation. The students had to work together to stabilize a collapsing asteroid base, using only their skills and weapons to redirect debris and prevent damage. Many students struggled to coordinate. Some relied on shouting commands, others on brute force, causing more instability. Elias took a deep breath and observed the situation. He noticed patterns in the debris, the momentum of falling rocks, and the weak points in the structure. He approached the other students calmly, showing them where to place their weapons and how to guide the debris safely. Slowly, carefully, the asteroid base stabilized. No one was harmed and the mission succeeded. When the galactic assessment ended, the students returned to the academy. The instructors were unanimous in their decision. Elias Ward had not only passed but had surpassed expectations. He had demonstrated intelligence, patience, adaptability, and leadership, qualities that no amount of steel, energy, or alien technology could replace. The awards ceremony was held in the Academy's main hall. Students from every species gathered, their eyes on the human who had challenged expectations and redefined what it meant to be strong. When Elias was called forward, he stepped quietly to the podium. Master Kale spoke first. "Elias Ward has reminded us all that strength does not always come from power. It comes from intelligence, observation, and patience. It comes from understanding the world and knowing how to act within it. Humanity, though young, carries a lesson for the galaxy. And today we see that lesson in action." Elias bowed. He did not raise his voice, did not boast, but the hall was filled with applause and admiration. Students who had once mocked him now looked up to him. Instructors who had doubted him now respected him. Even Rithar, the student who had once sneered, nodded with a quiet smile. After the ceremony, Elias returned to his dormitory. He sat by the window looking out at the stars. The galaxy was vast, full of challenges, dangers, and opportunities, but he felt ready. Not because of his weapon, but because of the way he had learned to think, adapt, and endure. He whispered quietly to himself, "Strength is not what you hold, but how you use it. This is only the beginning. One day, the galaxy will know that humans are more than what they seem." And so, Elias Ward, the quiet human with a blade of bone, became a legend, not for the material of his weapon, nor for his size, but for the intelligence, patience, and courage that defined humanity itself. Across the stars, stories began to spread about the human who had faced impossible odds and succeeded, not through destruction, but through understanding. The Academy had learned a lesson. The galaxy had learned a lesson. And humanity had only begun to show what it could do. As the moons of Vera rose over the Academy towers, Elias smiled softly. In his hands, the bone blade gleamed under the starlight. It was simple, unassuming, and perfect. It was a symbol, not of raw power, but of human ingenuity, patience, and heart. And somewhere, far across the galaxy, those who underestimated humans would begin to realize that strength comes in many forms, and the quiet, clever, and patient could change the course of history. While others crafted steel weapons, the human student honed a blade of bone.